So it's a pleasure to meet everyone here.
Thank you so much, Jeff. So Jeff will actually be staying on with this new cohort. He's got a couple more years to go. So there is some people who will be moving forward with you, just not our original team that started in 2017. So you will have some people who have been on the committee who will be able to provide some guidance. So you're not just doing it alone, and we're not just gonna push you off and then leave. So I'm just gonna go ahead and go down the participant line that I have. Abigail, would you like to introduce yourself, or just kind of name, background, maybe where you're located, and then why you're interested in joining?
Yeah, thanks so much. My name is Abigail Derby-Lewis, and I am in Chicago, Illinois. I work at the Field Museum of Natural History, and been there for about 10 years. In a former life, I worked in the tropics for about 10 years. I was a primate behavioral ecologist. The mapping I did was very much paper, pencils, out in the field. Lots has really advanced and changed since I did my own mapping. And basically what I get to do is work with a lot of amazing cartographers and spatial analysts. I don't do that work myself, but I direct a program called Conservation Tools. We're the applied conservation arm of the Field Museum, and half of our staff works in the Andes Amazon, half of our staff works in, stateside, kind of within that what we call urban wilderness, and it's community focused, so place-based, community focused. And I'm really interested in this group, in the development of these kinds of avenues and platforms for the reasons that all of you have been mentioning. How can we make, information, science, knowledge accessible to everyone, for everyone, in all ways possible? How can we bring that equity globally? The work that my colleagues have done, so it's a really interesting kind of group of folks who are ecologists, biologists, social scientists, and geospatial analysts with environmental educators. And we work in tandem on these projects in these different focal geographies. And they've done a lot of asset mapping with communities in both of those geographies, and many of the challenges that I'm sure you have all had, they have had as well. And so really trying to figure out, especially with the kinds of opportunities and tech that we have, how do you make that work? What are the ways to bring that to different places? And so I feel like my role is to learn as a conservation ecologist and landscape, conservation kind of purview. This is not my wheelhouse, and yet I need to be able to understand, to support, to create, to develop for the amazing program and staff that we have, and be able to connect their work for them to learn from all of you, and also for them to share their lessons and what they're doing and the ways in which they're working in these different places. So I'm really excited to be part of the network. I feel like my contribution will not be content heavy. It will be process and support and connecting and convening in ways that I hope will be very helpful. But I am so excited to learn from all of you. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for joining us, Abigail. We're really excited to have you here today. Next would be Dora.
Okay, unfortunately, because of where I am, I cannot share my screen, but I'm just a student, so I read about the whole program, and I want to learn more from it, what goes on there, and how I can also apply the knowledge to my study. I'm studying geoinformation science for land administration, so I would like to know more what goes on here, then take it up from there. Thank you.
And where are you, Dora?
Currently in the Netherlands.
Nice. And what is your specific area of research?
In land administration. So when it comes to creation of cadastre using alternative approaches, then we tend to consider other things like participatory mapping and all that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're really pleased that you took the time to meet with us. And please let us know if you have any questions or if you need support in your research.
Okay, I will.
And then, is it Fayez? Please correct me if I say your name wrong.
Oh, this is correct. My name is Fayaz.
Good.
Well, yeah, I'll try to be brief because I can spend days on talking about mapping in Pakistan. It started in 1982, and very, very interesting things that we found out. One is I have been working with urban and rural poor in Pakistan in different capacities, starting from 1987. And we found out that the most important, piece missing in working for, with the community was the level of trust within the communities and between the communities and the government. And the most important tool to build that trust and unleash the power of the poor was doing mapping. And it is very ironic, now we have almost 50% of Pakistan's population living in urban areas. But no urban government has updated map of their city or town with them, which is the most important thing needed for doing any planning, operation, maintenance, anything. And on the other hand, there is an institution, Survey of Pakistan, which has all the maps, but they don't share it with anyone. And I used to work for UNDP, and we had given them a grant also, Survey of Pakistan, to carry out mapping. And they even refused to give us the map on the pretext that it is something confidential. And base map is the most important thing for doing any planning or to figure out what is happening. So as rural-urban migration started, informal settlements started emerging. Karachi is Pakistan's biggest urban center. Its population is 20 million. And 50% of the population, they live in informal settlements. So one of the large settlement is called Orangi. Its name is Orangi. And in Orangi, what happened was an authority was set up by the government for providing shelter to the poor. And many of the government programs failed, in providing shelter to the poor. So they thought, how can we find out? So they found out that all the poor, they were not buying any plot in the areas which were designated by the government. They were all opting for the informal settlements established by land grabbers. So they thought, how the hell can we learn from them? And they went and they started mapping the area. And first it was social mapping the process, what happens, how a piece of land is acquired, how it is parceled out, how people take possession of this, how they pay off, all those things. So then from shelter to stopping eviction to providing access to water and sanitation services, to governance of municipal facilities, from Karachi to other towns, a series of exercises were carried out. So an organization, Orangi Pilot Project in Karachi, had hired an architect, Parveen Rahman, who for 40 years, she mapped out all the informal settlements in Karachi, covering 10 million people and people living in peri-urban areas. So this was the only organization which could challenge any donor or government development program based on, because most of the consultants would fly in, paid heavily, come up with very elegant reports, very glossy presentations, and they know nothing about the ground reality because none of them had any base map. So Orangi Pilot Project was able to contest their view based on the map they had and the physical reality. And then they would do 4 kinds of mapping. One was physical mapping in the form of base map, then social mapping, how communities live, their living conditions, then administrative mapping, what were the government institutions there, what service they were providing, and then institutional mapping, what civil society institutions existed there, to what extent they were addressing those needs. So this created the foundation for coming up with their own plans and entering in dialogue with the government. And same was used in other areas of Pakistan. I was chief of small grants program of UNDP in Pakistan at that time. So we used this approach to help municipal governments and the local communities to use mapping as an exercise for scoring and ranking services provided by the government, by engaging citizens for water metering and paying for water services, and evading the excessive water charges by the government, and creating governance facilities. So there are so many stories to tell. And one of the most important thing was that based on this mapping, Parveen Rahman, the architect of Orangi Pilot Project, she succeeded in getting a $100 million loan by the Asian Development Bank cancelled because she was able to prove that it is not needed. They don't have the map and they don't have the information. And if you take the base map into consideration, you don't need any foreign funding. It can be done with the government of Pakistan's contribution component. They were also able to stop eviction. Very, very interesting. Under a military government, they started eviction in one area on the ground that all these people are living within 30 feet of the railway track. So this settlement needs to be evicted. And they mapped the area and they discovered that offices of 30 multinational corporations, high-rise buildings, were located within the same distance. So they just created a map and distributed it in the neighborhood. They were able to raise hell and stop eviction. They said, first evict these multinational corporations, then come and evict us. So there are many other settings. And the other thing was another Asian Development Bank loan for millions of dollars for providing water supply services to the informal settlement. And Parveen Rahman was able to show that there is water siphoning taking place from 109 points. And if that is stopped, not only the municipal government will not need any loan, it will be able to save 5.2 billion rupees every year. So that is the use of mapping in different contexts. There is a very rich history. And Parveen Rahman, based on that, she wrote an article for Asian Housing for Coalition Rights. We are all ninja turtles of mapping. But because of this mapping, unfortunately, because she exposed the water mafia in Karachi, she was killed on 13 March 2013. But she left behind a very powerful and rich legacy, and it is being used by many. So I am a strong believer of using social mapping for unleashing, helping communities discover their own power, gel, and then engage in dialogue with the government And based on that idea, I have created recently an organization, the Knowledge Executive, to train young people in Pakistan to use as a tool for restoring dysfunctional services and for effective management of urban and rural services. You can go to our website, the Knowledge Executive, it will give you more information. I'll stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for all of the information. You're going to bring so much knowledge to our team and from your past experience. And we're definitely interested in having more knowledge exchanges, and perhaps you could come and talk with us on one of our webinars as a guest and not just a host, because you have so much to be able to share with us. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
And the next on my list is Indra.
Hi, good evening. I'm from Nepal. I'm still recovering from COVID, so you may not be hearing me a strong voice. I was very interested in this ISPM because one of my friends, who is Paul Lundberg, he suggested that I join this group because I had worked in 1992 for the National Planning Commission of Nepal, which is the apex body of the government, to establish a system that would help to plan resources in a decentralized way at the local government level. Because in 1990, Nepal had just new elections and a new government of new system of government, more democratic and decentralized. So to help the decentralized governance, there was no data because in the past everything was a centrist approach that was used by the government. Only the representatives selected by the monarch had access to the resources, and they would use that money based on their own judgment, but there was no information on the human settlements and population and different services, somewhat similar to what Barozzi described. In 5 years' time, I was able, with the help of the project staff, to map around 40,000 settlements, almost 50% of the country, getting data from the settlements and processing at the district level, and then bringing into the Nepal's national planning body, which is the central body. So this multiple levels of uses of the data was created. Basically, the main source of information for this was because the topographic maps were under the control of the military here in Nepal also in those days. Department of Survey had made available aerial photographs of 1950s. So we mosaicked and created uncontrolled photo mosaic of those local government units, and took that to the village committees, the village secretaries, and trained them to put a dot on the settlement that is existing on the ground using the aerial photo mosaic. And we also trained them to collect data by those settlements, how many households, what facilities there were, whether any banking or schools or any other projects. So this kind of locational service information was also part of the settlement data, and it became very comprehensive in terms of developing plan for the districts, and it became very useful for the National Planning Commission to understand what was happening actually in the community, because Nepal is all mountainous country. The villages are at very high elevation, somewhere in the valleys, somewhere in the mountain slopes. not accessible. So knowing those settlements, mapped in one seamless district level map for one district, repeating that for all 75 districts was a very, very comprehensive information. So that's how I began. So that was funded similar to in Pakistan, UNDP. So that program continued, and there was conflict, insurgency, Maoist insurgency that began in 1996, and everything stopped by 2002. So then the peace process began in 2006. By then, I joined Usaid, U.S. Agency for International Development, as a special analyst, and developed a system there. In the earlier case, I didn't know even that was a participatory mapping. We didn't realize that that was actually participatory mapping. We just trained them. We took the help of the people on the ground, because otherwise we could not complete it. Just one or two people coming from Kathmandu to the districts and doing that was not possible. So we trained those local government officials and local representatives, and they continued the mapping. Is basically physically putting a dot on aerial photograph, and later we would transfer that into maps and create settlement maps showing different services, schools, post offices, health posts, so on and so forth. So with the USAID, in the USAID program, so the development, the technology was more developed. We used online systems for creating a participatory mapping approach for identifying 20,000 and more locations of the US government's program activities in different parts of the country. So that's my experience in participatory mapping. I didn't know it was participatory mapping at that time, but later I realized there were so many organizations and people interested or developing this concept of participatory mapping. And this ISPM, I think, is one that fits into that framework. As I read some of the things that Sharla made available on the links. So I'm hoping that I will be able to learn more and consolidate my understanding. Sorry. So that's what my expectation is here. And I'm really grateful to you all to listen to you. And I hope to be benefiting for myself, and maybe I will be able to provide some contribute something, I don't know, to some extent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Indra.
Thank you, Indra.
Hope you feel better soon. Take care.
Yeah, thank you so much. In Nepal this year, very, very large casualties due to COVID, and many people got affected. Last year it was not that bad. But this year, very, very bad. So somehow it was, no matter how much you try to stay away from it, but it just it catches you. So, so thank you very much.
All right, and the next person I have in line would be Makwai.
Oh, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Good. Yes, my name is Makwai Wabesiolwe. I'm originally from Southern Africa, from a kingdom called Barozzi land. And Barozzi land is a landlocked kingdom in Southern Africa. And like many kingdoms prior to the Second World War, basically the Berlin Treaty divided our kingdom and our nation of people who we are all related through kinship, through blood, divided us into 5 different countries: Angola, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and I think that's it, 5. So basically, my training is as an actor, believe it or not. I studied music and drama in London, at the Guildhall School, and immediately sort of got into, I was part of the anti-apartheid movement and co-starred with Denzel Washington in a film called Cry Freedom. And that was sort of my own sort of decolonizing process in terms of having been very alienated from my country due to the trajectory that is imperialism that we all know about. And that trajectory is always about, and for us, it was about the British South Africa company, Cecil Rhodes, deciding that he was going to name this whole part of Africa after himself. And then he was going to not only exploit the land and labor, but he was also going to put in place a whole series of conditions, systemic conditions that would paralyze the indigenous people in having access to their own fiscal economies. So fast forward, I lived in Namibia. I lived in all those countries because I have family in all of those countries. This man behind me is my great-great-grandfather, King Liwanika of Barozzi land, who from about 1888 created the reserved land specifically for animals, which became the first national parks in the world. Actually, he's credited as creating these reserves for animals. And fast forward to today, UNESCO, basically because of the mechanisms of imperialism, where basically these nation states all over, I'm just speaking from my perspective, nation states in Southern Africa were, coerced into partnerships with the British South Africa Company, and then basically annexed and occupied. So fast forward to today, African Parks, there's an association called the African Parks. That's the chair of the parks is Prince Harry, and the board members are Warren Buffett and basically the 1%, Jeff Bezos, all those types. And they have a plan, to basically come to Africa soon. So I could see that coming. I've got like a sixth sense about all sorts of things. And I started to get very political and diplomatic in 2012. I created an organization called the Barozzi National Freedom Alliance, which was going to address human rights as well as land issues related to Barozzi land. We signed a treaty. The last treaty we signed with the British was called the Barozzi Land Agreement of 1964, that made us still the custodians of the land we've been living on since 2000 years. And so this Barozzi Land Agreement was abrogated by this nation state that the British created in northwestern, in northern Rhodesia, that is now called Zambia. Failed state. And basically they abrogated the treaty. They changed our name from what was a nation, where we were a recognized nation up until 1964, where we had heads of state, kings and queens come and visit us. I mean, it's all very, very well documented. So I had all this forensic evidence, to lay a claim and to write legal cases against the abrogation of the treaty and the annexation of our lands. And so those cases went to the African Union Human Rights Commission. Those cases went to the Permanent Council on Arbitration. Those cases went to the Human Rights Commission in Geneva. And I was voted as the chairperson general of the Barozzi National Freedom Alliance last year, after sort of working behind the scenes, writing constitutions, really resuscitating and reimagining and reconstructing our history that was never taught in schools. Because the school system was funded by the UK and also China, there was, our history was completely erased. Like 2,000 years of African indigenous history completely wiped off the face of the earth. And so I was really interested in how can we reclaim this, without creating a conflict? How can I retrace and tell the story of this land, without conflict? So I registered our country with UNPO, and Tibet was the founding member of the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization. Balochistan is a member, Kabylia in Algeria is a member, Biafra is a member, Yoruba, all of us nations, First Nations, original, places, have come together, under the banner of the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organizations, because we are a majority in our own country, but we are dispossessed in our own lands. And that's a trajectory that I can see. It's clear all over the world. And so we, as a member of the UNPO, I'm also the chairperson of Africa and the Middle East for UNPO. So that when it comes to negotiating and talking to the special rapporteur, for example, on minority issues at the United Nations, I'm the one that, that has those conversations or that leads a panel or something like that. And so what we did, we just had our last special rapporteur on minority issues forum, just like a month ago. And we recognized, we tried to isolate what are the roots of all of our conflicts. And it did come down to, of course, to the Berlin Treaty of 1884 and the Treaty of Versailles. And this was interesting because it was going on as Gaza and the occupied territories in, as Charla knows, in Palestine were being, they were being evicted. Right before our eyes, we saw how that colonial relationship, how that occupier, settler ideology, in action, And so here we are. Just now, I know you all in Canada, you're still reeling, with the destruction of those monuments of Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth that symbolize that rupture and that the end of trust, really, So I started to collect a lot of forensic evidence from around the world to prove, to try and prove that, wait a minute, this is the land that my ancestors have been custodians for. We've been looking after these animals very well for thousands of years. We don't need African parks. We don't need Prince Harry to come and have photo ops, with rhinoceros to show that he cares about these animals. We do not need UNESCO, because then what happened was the Zambian government, which is this rogue failed state government, decided to petition to basically to diffuse the Barozzi land situation. They decided to ask the UNESCO to declare the Barozzi floodplain, which is our central government, as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So I had to push back. We had to push back on that. So then I thought, well, you know what? I think the best way because the thing is, as an Indigenous person, I don't even like to use that word. As a person who has the right to sit and stand on the land that my ancestors are buried on. In my group, storytelling, naming. The naming has a binding power. And so when the British came, and the Germans and the Italians who brokered the Italian boundary treaty that separated us from Namibia, everybody, basically, when they came, changing names was a very deliberate act. It was a destabilizing act. So that the place name for an African has a spiritual power. And not only that, the name has linguistic roots that tell us a story. For example, our capital is called Mungu, which is a Nilotic. Our language is partly Nilotic, is partly Sutu. We're not a pure people. We are very diverse. 34 different tribes related through kinship. We're very diverse. So Mungu, our capital, which the British changed to Mongu, Mu is the stem root of Mu is God. So my name, Mukwai, means I am connected to universe. So a lot of our language and our words are related to our relationship with the land, And so we have, for example, we have a flood ritual. We've had it for centuries. Every time the flood comes, we have 3 capitals. The north of our kingdom is ruled by a man, the south is ruled by a woman, and the middle kingdom is ruled by a regent princess. We have these flood rituals that when the flood comes, we move before the flood comes in these ritual processes called kuomboka, to wade in the water and to get out. And then we have a ritual 6 months later when the flood recedes to come back. So the wildebeest migrate from Angola, 2 million plus. They move in and we move out. So there's this symbiotic relationship with the land. So what has happened, in the last 50 plus years is that we have been disenfranchised of our land. And so I'm very, very interested in participatory mapping, as I'm interested in participatory theater, which is what I use, Augusta Boal's theater of the oppressed kind of way of mobilizing communities to recognize their wealth. I'll just finish one quick thing. The thing about people in Southern Africa, we've been indoctrinated to believe that we're poor, that we have nothing, when in fact it's the opposite. The assets underneath us are so profound that I think doing a mapping exercise, I have all of this forensic evidence of letters from the turn of, from the 1880s about the boundaries. I've got maps, many different maps, but I haven't, and I've also, as an ethnographer, been collecting stories about place, connecting name to place. And there's a lot that a map can't tell us, actually, that history, that storytelling and that orature, which is, our orature is songs, dances, riddles, conundrums, all the things that we were told were not valued as literature, as evidence of historicity, So I'm sort of breaking it down, and I've said I'm going to use performance, and I'm going to do a mapping exercise with all of my community that are in those those borders section of Kasani, Kazungula, to be able to remap and to tell a new story of what is happening, of the land that we have, and to claim it as ours. So that's my interest. I was lucky enough to meet Charla, which was amazing, and our histories and our interests converge, and I'm really interested in what you did in Pakistan and what you've done in Nepal and all the other places. So just thank you for allowing me to speak for a moment, and I'm really looking forward to working with you all. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing that story with us. It's truly profound. And I look forward to working with you towards making sure that we document those histories and that your people are never forgotten. Next person on my list, and I'm going to say something about time. I wanted to make sure that we had a brief overview of kind of what the organization does, and then has a little bit of time left over for question and answer. So I'm going to have to limit everyone's kind of introduction to just a minute. But we'll be able to follow up with some more discussion afterwards for those who are able to stay. Hillary, would you like to give a brief introduction? So happy to have you here today.
I think you are muted. We can't hear you.
Do you want us to go to the next person, Hillary, until you get the microphone figured out? No worries. Next person on my list is Sophie.
Yes, hi everyone. Great to meet you. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, great. Nice to meet you. My name is Sophie Moa. I am based in Cambridge in the UK. My background is community engagement with a specific focus on innovation. So I've been working for quite some time here in Cambridge on essentially taking technologies that come out of Cambridge University, taking them to places who actually need those technologies, and seeing how we can remodel them, remake them, and redesign them based on need and what is on the shelf in that location. I'm a real open source advocate, and for the last year and a bit, I've been working with the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. I am a community services manager here at HOT, And so my role is really kind of to look at the different participatory mapping methods that are used to enable the creation of really detailed local data maps that are important to the communities that use them, and really kind of plug in different opportunities for those individuals and those communities. I also have a side hustle, which is I do some work on a little device called Waterscope, which is a little microscope that can detect bacterial contamination in water, and it's a really exciting project to be part of. Me and my friends sit at the River Cam and test water at the weekends, but essentially what I want to do, and we've already got the Waterscope in operation in Bangladesh, South Africa and Tanzania, but hoping to kind of expand that and integrate some GIS into it so we can start seeing maps and trends related to different contaminated water sources in different locations. I'm here because I think the organisation is fantastic. I've been following it for a while, and when I saw the search for committee members, I got all excited and signed up. So that's why I'm here. Looking forward to hearing more, and I've definitely gone over a minute, but yeah, that's me. Great to meet you all.
It's very nice to meet you too. We'll just jump back to Hillary real quick. Hillary is one of our founding members.
Thank you very much, Charla. My name is Hillary. First, I'm really impressed by the presentation from Professor about Professor Siolwe about what they're doing in Southern Africa. I'm very happy to be here. It's an honor, as always, to see you all, Charla. I'm happy. I work for an non-governmental organization called Kenya Land Alliance that conducts advocacy in Kenya and indeed with other colleagues around Africa and globally to protect the land rights of land marginalized groups in Kenya. Currently, we are working with indigenous communities around where we're having large-scale land investments in Kenya, and we are using mapping as one of the innovative means through which the communities are asserting their rights over their land and natural resources. Thank you very much, and it's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Hillary. We're so happy to have you here, and it's so nice to see your face. So yeah, I kind of let everybody go over. I'm sorry I didn't leave a lot of discussion on ISPM, but I think getting to know one another in our work is so important. So I really like it when we engage in informal dialogue. I think that's how we make the strongest connections. So I will be available to answer any questions after 10 o'clock. I'm not going to jump off right away. So if you have something that you need to discuss, we can do it. But I'll just go ahead and kind of jump into a little overview of ISPM. Obviously, the bylaws and our manual are available to you for you to review on your own, and you can come back and email me questions, or you can come to our next August meeting, or you can come to the meeting tonight if you're available. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's share a link. Where? I don't remember the last time I shared. Let's see here. Nope, that's background. Let's share link. I don't know how to share my screen. This is what I get for not doing Skype anymore and only doing Zoom. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, go to more.
Yep. Oh, of course, it's the wrong screen. All right. So we do everything on our Google Drive. So you would receive access as soon as you let me know that you would really like to join. We'll give you access to our whole drive. We, work on blog posts, obviously. We're having conferences, but we've changed our structure. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, but you'll see that we kind of have built up a database of different, information that we share with our members. So we're continuously trying to update that and ensure that we have all of the different participatory mapping methods represented here. We do have social media and are interested in taking on members who would like to take over our social media and advocate for us that way. But right now we do have an executive committee. The executive committee comprises of about 12 individuals. 4 of those are special advisors, so they don't necessarily attend every meeting, but they are prominent in their field within a specific industry, and they kind of advise us and provide kind of information in case we have a member who's looking for a question to be answered. Our bylaws are very simple. We go by Robert's rules, but to be honest, we don't vote about much because we're here to really just engage with the community and answer questions. And then we now just hold our quarterly webinar instead of a biannual conference. And the reason why we decided to move from a biannual in-person conference to this digital webinar space is because we've just realized that even though we were offering grants and financial assistance to individuals from underrepresented areas of the world, they're still having trouble getting there in person. And it's still just not the type of experience that we really want to have. We really want to foster more engaged work in specific topics that are relevant to them. And so the webinar format is easier for us to plan out. And then we can also have different individuals and as guests to discuss a very specific set of topics within participatory mapping. We've also invested into the Mighty Network, which has the capability of being an online learning management system. So we would like to really build out the courses that we offer our members so that they can actually come to the network and learn a bit more about participatory mapping methods and software. So you'll see that our articles of incorporation are very fast forward. We're here to develop, test, evaluate, and apply methodology in participatory mapping and GIS, but we still have a lot of practitioners who do not use GIS necessarily, who are strong advocates of paper mapping, strong advocates of, stick in the dirt mapping, just drawing things out and having discussions about the needs of the community over necessarily financial interests of governments or developers. We do have a president and a vice president, a treasurer and a secretary. Nobody wanted to be treasurer. Nobody ever does. So I got stuck as the secretary treasurer person. Most likely I will continue to kind of be the treasurer. We don't take in a lot of finances. Our only cost is our Mighty Network. So that's about $1,000 a year. So that's kind of our fundraising requirements. And if you come on and join our team, our next meeting is all going to be about planning out fundraising for the next 12 months and making sure that we get that $1,000 in the bank very early and so that we're not stressed about it. It has been paid off for this year. I just paid it this month. So you guys are good for the entire next year. But we definitely want a group of executives who are interested in doing outreach for us to different corporate sponsors that'll keep our webinar and the lights on in our Mighty Network. And then the secretary is mostly just the person who makes sure to schedule the meetings, that we have an agenda, and answer questions when membership have them. So they're kind of the point person. We do have an international conference chair, which probably should be updated. This used to be Marquetta Chieta. We probably will be removing this person's role since we're not going to be doing these bigger conferences. And then we have a communications officer, which is Marina Bruckhurst. She was also one of our founding members, so she probably will be leaving as well. And then, as I said, we have special advisors. Our tenure is for a 4-year term. It might seem long, but it goes by really quickly. And since we've really reduced the kind of responsibilities of the committee, you'll find that you really only have these monthly meetings, and then each of us has to take on a webinar in our tenure. Potentially that's only once, potentially that'll be twice, depending on the amount of new execs we have in your cohort. But so far, our webinars have been really easy to coordinate, and we had a really great turnout, and it increased our membership by, I think, like 28 people. So it's definitely working. It's really a good way to get us out there. We set it up to have elections, but we kind of have an open door policy. So I don't think we'll be necessarily voting on bringing you in. But we definitely want to hear that there's a commitment by you for the tenure, and that you're going to be committed to the organization. Anybody could be a member. We used to have yearly dues, and we decided, even though we had like a discounted rate for individuals who couldn't pay due to economic hardship. We've just decided to open membership up completely free to everyone. And so that's why the fundraising component is going to be so important, is because we're no longer reliant on those membership dues. But we've definitely noticed an increase in our membership since doing that. And so we would like to keep that open and free for everyone. Like I said, we try to meet once a month. We would sometimes have working sessions outside of that one thing. Like if we have to get something done on the network, if we're building out a course, you might volunteer to be on a subcommittee that meets outside of our regular once a month time, but that doesn't happen very often. Rudo Kemper is our president. We will be looking for a new president and a new vice president. They're more of figureheads and represent our organization at conferences and different events. Does anybody have any questions about our bylaws? No? And then we have this executive operations manual that I've helped develop. And this will really take you step by step what your role is, where the different documents are for you to be able to engage with, and what's required of you. So here we'll have access to the Google Drive. We talk about the different, member outreach lists, and they're all connected back to this document. We have our webinar series and how to do that. We even have a quarterly activity list so that it'll help guide you through that process step by step. We talk about our expectations in media creation and where you have to go to create that media for each webinar, where you have to conduct outreach and communication about those webinars, including our social media and our Mighty network. And so we're really hoping that we've created this document. It'll make things super easy for our new execs to come on and really pick up where we left off. But a lot of us didn't start in 2017, so there are a handful of members who will continue on with you for a year or 2 years to help you in that process. So it's kind of staggered in that way. But we're really hoping, since this was a very large pool, we should have 12 new members in our cohort. So if you haven't received access to this documentation, please let me know, and I can certainly share it with you. Do I have any questions about our kind of format going forward, or how we got to that format? It was really through trial and error, us trying to do too big too quickly without enough resources. So we scaled back a lot and we tried to make it as simple as possible so that we can continue to be a hub or a home for everything to do with participatory mapping. Yes, I can certainly do that.
I just had one question, and happy to hang on after, because I know it's 9:05 if other folks need to jump off, but I was just kind of looking at the different goals and wondering, understandably they're kind of high level, general, those 4 pieces, but for example, like your 500 membership goal, are there subsets within that are targeted for different geographies, different, do you have some specificity around who you're really trying to engage, or is it just any 500 members? That would be helpful to know in terms of what role and support we might be able to do in terms of really, again, kind of bringing that equity across and bringing in membership from a really wide range.
We have not talked specific membership demographics for the 500, but we did a lot of the leg foundation by mapping out where all the geography departments are and the different associations in Latin America, Africa, and Asia. Due to the fact that a large portion of the membership that we've seen at these conferences were from the West, and our goal is to make sure that people are having access. So our members like Hillary have been extremely important in making sure that we stay engaged in communities that might not know about what we do. We also have representatives in the Philippines and throughout Latin America, but we're looking to really expand that more. And we think that what's really going to bring people in is by expanding the tools in our toolbox, and being able to provide more hands-on training as much as possible in regards to how do you actually use these tools, which is someone who didn't come from a GIS or a geography background coming into this landscape. It was very overwhelming, which is part of the reason why I was so moved to help push this along, was because I was like, we need to have a space where somebody can come and figure this out, because it was very difficult for me. And that's why I continuously push for us to, like, we're working on a edited volume right now that to evaluate all the different participatory mapping software. And it's been picked up by Springer. It should be out in 2023, and it's something that's going to have to be updated all the time because the field is so big, and with geodesign and software planning, it's continuously evolving. So I think a lot of it is just maintaining the databases and ensuring that we have these opportunities for people, and for us to, since we just moved to the Mighty Network 1 year ago, this is the time we would like to assess, okay, who is our membership? What countries are they from? Which countries or areas should we target next? And I think that that's going to be a really important next step. And is going to be a part of the new cohort's responsibilities to plan on how to actually do that. Any other questions? And I did record this, and I will be making it available to everyone, and recording the evening one too, so you can meet some of the other cohort from there. Please feel free to email me if you have any follow-up questions. I will be emailing everyone one last time, and then I would like to get like a yes or no answer from everyone who's present. So I'll be reaching out to you for that. And then, like I said, we have a meeting scheduled for the first week of every month, the first Tuesday. So all of that's in our Mighty Network. So if you haven't joined the network, please make sure you log on and you sync your calendars to our updates. And that way you'll be able to see that when our next meeting is, and you can get into the link. But I think everybody here has joined our Mighty Network. So thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to sharing this video, and please do look for the video in the afternoon so you can meet other cohort members from there. And again, sorry for going over. I just wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to get to know one another.
Thank you so much. It was great meeting everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you.